This week I saw an episode of 2-Minute Papers by Dr. Carolee discussing some of the findings regarding ChatGPT 4 and what's referred to as sparks of AGI, sparks of general intelligence, the holy grail of artificial intelligence, a computer that can think like and be as smart as or very much smarter than a human can be. And there have been some very interesting discoveries, despite the fact that GPT is simply a large language model trained only on text. It has a lot of interesting emergent capabilities. One of them appears to be an understanding of spatial reasoning problems. So the particular, I won't be able to find it right now, but the particular discussion here was an experiment that was done where the researcher drew a maze on a piece of paper that ChatGPT obviously couldn't see, and asked ChatGPT to navigate its way through the maze one step at a time. The researcher would then reply with which room the AI had found was in now, or whether it had run into a wall and couldn't go that direction. And then at the end of the experiment, once it had navigated the entire maze, the entire structure, which was more like a house, you asked ChatGPT to describe step by step what it had found, or what the map was that it had built. Now, this is a very interesting class of problems because, in a sense, it relates to a concept of theory of mind. Theory of mind is the ability to determine or to at least suspect what someone else is thinking, what's inside the mind that you cannot see. And so this is ChatGPT trying to understand what is the researcher thinking, what is in the researcher's mind. In a sense, this is a related category of experiments, and it did exceptionally well. It generated, and in fact, it was even able to create ASCII art depiction of the maze that was exactly what the researcher had put together. It nailed it. And so this raised some interesting questions. The really interesting question for me was, well, when we're experimenting with exposing our children to new forms of knowledge, new skills, deduction, reasoning, strategy, tactics, even fairness, right? We play games. We play games. And there seems to be a bit of a new trend where people are beginning to realize that, hey, you can actually play games with ChatGPT and it will actually behave very much like a human being can. So I'm going to do a bit of an experiment today. I actually did an experiment yesterday. Just came across this, by the way, which was a related maze type experiment that ChatGPT was able to find its way through. So mazes are quite interesting. What I did was a kind of 20 questions style of game. Now, I haven't seen anybody do this, but I'm certain I'm not the first one. And it had a very interesting result. The question I asked it was this one here. I'm thinking of an object and I want you to guess it. You can ask me any question about the object. I won't answer yes or no. Continue asking questions until you guess the object correctly. And I was looking at a coffee cup sitting in front of me on my desk. Lovely Starbucks coffee cup, which is unfortunately right now empty at the moment. And it started off. Now, this is very interesting because in order for it to figure out what object I am thinking of, it has to start by partitioning the possible knowledge space. If you take all the objects in the known universe, you know, what could it be? And it started off by dividing it into indoors versus outdoors. Now, that's interesting because it's kind of a binary distinction, isn't it? And a pretty functionally useful one. So I answered yes. Is it electronic? No. Is it made of plastic? Now, this was a tough one. I'm sure a coffee cup can be made of plastic. So I had to break with the sort of binary definition and say not usually. It had no problems with that. Went straight into, is it primarily used in the kitchen? Now, I didn't know how to answer this one because obviously I don't always use my coffee cup in the kitchen, but it often is, and it is kitchen related. So I went ahead and answered yes. That probably was not the best answer, but I was trying to stick to binary responses. I should have said sometimes. Is it used in preparing food? Now, the questions are actually getting harder for me to answer. No, it's not used to prepare it unless you're making instant coffee, right? It's a serving vessel. So I said no. Is it used for storing food? No, you wouldn't want to keep your food in there overnight. Is it used for serving food? Okay, now this was tough because it's talking about food rather than drink. But I figured food and drink can probably be considered to be in the same category, so I said yes. Is it a type of plate or dish? Again, not really, sort of. Again, no problem with that ambiguous answer. It found that as valuable and as information useful to its deduction as a binary yes or no. Is the object a bowl? No. Is it a platter or serving tray? No. Is it a type of glassware or cup? Yes. Is it a wine glass? No. Is it a coffee mug? Yes. Now, easily as interesting, it understood that it didn't need to go any further. Great. The object you were thinking of is a coffee mug. Now, it did that as efficiently as any human could have, given starting with an infinite number of possible objects, right, in the known universe. So this is absolutely fantastic. Now I'm going to try this some more, and I'm going to start doing some evaluations. Maybe I can even find a way to test it against, how humans would normally respond in some online forum, get some kind of metric, and ask it about things like quasars and, a helium atom and a blade of grass and all sorts of different things, a cloud, and see how it can go, and even how detailed it can get. Like maybe I'm talking about a specific part of an automobile engine or a specific component inside my computer. These types of things could be very interesting. Or a particular passage in a particular book. How good is it at bisecting that knowledge space until it gets to a meaningful and relevant answer? Now and then I decided to try something new. I'd had a discussion here with it, and I asked it to reformat this entire discussion as a discussion between me and ChatGPT, because I wanted to paste this into Facebook. And look at that. It did a really good job of doing it. And then I said, I don't want user there. Change user to Mike. Boom, done. So this was actually really, really interesting. And I began experimenting a little bit more. Then I decided to try what's known as lateral thinking. So this is a lateral thinking puzzle. Man lives on the 10th floor of a building. Every day he takes the elevator to go down to the ground floor to go to work or to go shopping. When he returns, he takes the elevator to the 7th floor, walks to the stairs to reach his apartment on the 10th floor. He hates walking. Why does he do it? Why does he only go up to the 7th floor? And it immediately answered. Now, it's important to note, this particular lateral thinking puzzle is very well known. This answer is on the internet. It is going to find it. It is going to know it. It is going to be in its knowledge space in the large language model. And I'm dealing with ChatGPT 4 here. So this makes good sense. I think I'm working with 4 here. And so unsurprising, right? It found that one. So let me try a different one. Another one I pulled was from another website. Was this one here. Man walks into a bar, asks the barman for a glass of water. The barman pulls out a gun and points it at the man. The man says thank you and walks out. And it recognized straight away this is a classic lateral thinking puzzle that understood exactly. It even described it straight from the text of some puzzle site, no doubt. Obviously modified, but it had that information. Man who walked into the bar had hiccups, and being startled with the gun being pulled on him stopped his hiccups, so he was sorted. Then I asked it a bunch of other questions, totally unrelated, about Lambda and some stuff, and then I went back to trying to solve a maze. Now I had some difficulty here. I had some difficulty getting it to follow the maze that I wanted. It would ask for an image of the maze to solve it, and in particular, this version of ChatGPT 4 does have the ability to access images in theory by using its web plugin, but I do not yet have access to plugins, and therefore I cannot give it a URL and have it go navigate to that URL and look at the image and have any chance of parsing that image. Although I think that is very likely a possibility, particularly with the addition of other plugins like Mathematica. It may very well be able to take information from an image and use it to answer questions but I'm not able to do that here. So I tried to break it down. Didn't actually run into a good and meaningful. I tried pasting in the maze. I think it misunderstood that these as the pathways rather than as the walls. So it thought that this was the starting point. It just didn't really work. So it marked that as starting. It marked that as ending. Where clearly, these are the entrances and exits in the opposite corners. So I tried to get it to correct that. It didn't work. I'll experiment with that more. I decided to try some other things. I pasted in some ASCII art. I wanted to see how it would handle it. It seems to have trouble with understanding spaces as a formatted character. It decided that this was a Christmas tree. To be perfectly honest, I can't even remember what it was that I pasted in. It was quite visible. I think it was a 3D image of a maze. I wanted to just see, could it actually infer that this is intended to be a three-dimensional ASCII art diagram looking down a corridor? It thought it was a Christmas tree. So, and it confidently thought it was a Christmas tree, which was very interesting. Then we gave him another lateral thinking puzzle. Now, this one was thought up by a friend of mine, and to our knowledge, it is not online anywhere. Very well could be, but he phrased it like this. Man works in an office job in London, lives on the outskirts. Every morning he takes the train to go away from the city for 15 minutes. He then gets out at a station and takes the same line in the opposite direction to get to work. Why does he do this instead of taking the train directly to work? And it had a very relevant answer straight away. He's likely avoiding overcrowded trains by taking the train for a short distance in the opposite direction. He's boarding the train before it reaches the busy central London stations, which allows him to get a seat and avoid the overcrowding that would occur if he took it directly from his home station. Bang on correct. Now, where did it get this answer from? To be fair, we can't be sure. Did it figure this out itself in a sort of deductive reasoning kind of way? Or did it come across some text somewhere where this problem was solved? Either is plausible at this point. For a large language model, it would seem more likely it found the answer somewhere or the context of the answer, and it basically regenerated that text in a sort of autocomplete on steroids kind of way. But it did such an exceptional job, we find that quite fascinating. Certainly this problem and this answer are in the space of human knowledge and probably exist somewhere on the internet, even though my mate thought this particular puzzle up himself. Then I decided to see if it can play chess. I'll be white, you be black, and I gave moves, and it understood them perfectly. It answered them perfectly. It just nailed it. It was crushing me, basically. So I haven't played chess in a millennia, it feels like. And I actually misentered a coordinate, and it called me out straight away. I just misread them, and then fixed them again, and then he did a kingside castle, and that was the point when I gave up, and I wanted to know some other things. Asked it some unrelated questions to see what it would do. I wanted to see if it could bisect other knowledge spaces. In particular, I wanted to see if it could bisect the knowledge space of Brazilian Zouk and do 20 questions with something of figuring out a particular thing. Now, Brazilian Zouk is an absolutely beautiful dance. There's a particular move in it. The one I was thinking of is a simple beginner move known as Saltino. And I wanted to see if it would classify it correctly. So first question it asked was, is it a dip or a lift? So very interesting. It picked a place to start. Is it a traveling step? I figured it probably was. Now this was interesting because the way it had to phrase the questions in its own terminology for dance were actually already beyond my own way of thinking about the knowledge space of Zouk. So it was very difficult for me to know what is the answer to that question. How do I know exactly what its meaning is? I haven't thought of dividing the knowledge space in Zouk in the way that I was asking ChatGPT to. So it did some very interesting stuff. It wanted to know if it was a box step. Wanted to know if it involved a cross step, if there was a circular turn, and it got very interesting. Now, let's go into some more interesting things. I found some additional fun things to play with here. Now, today I began playing a little bit with, and the reason my coffee is now empty is I began playing a little bit with a game of Battleship. I really wanted to know a little bit more about ChatGPT's ability to understand a sort of virtual physical space, right? Actual space, and understand the positioning of things. Now, I found some very interesting things here where it did a pretty decent job of laying out its ships and understanding the game, and it placed its ships, and I don't know where it placed them, and then we began playing. But I was having some technical difficulties with the tool I was using here, which was actually papergames.io. I was able to set up 2 players, but it doesn't actually allow me to position the ships where I want. And because I couldn't tell where ChatGPT's were, there was no way for me to set up the ChatGPT side of this in order for me to actually play a real game. So this was very interesting. So then I experimented with it again. I experimented with it in a very similar way, but this time it was going to be purely a 10x10 game on papergames.io, whereas I'd had a 14x14 playboard on a different one. It understands the rules, which it gave me. I asked it if it knows how to play. Yes, it knows them. All right, it's set up ships, set up mine. Now, immediately it gives me a complaint saying I can't set up the board, I can't interact with it, I can't see the image, I can't. Then I turn around and say, you don't need to. Just give me the coordinates. Here's the grid. Why does it say the grid is 2x2? I don't know what that is. That's completely wrong. Attack coordinates will be placed row and column. Give me your attack coordinates. So I told it exactly how we're going to play, and it absolutely seems to be able to absorb that particularly well. So it can't see the board, and it gave me an attack miss, and then it thought it was my turn. It was my turn because it missed. I made my attack coordinate, and then I realized that it actually hadn't placed ships. In this particular instance of the game, it wasn't aware of its role in setting the game, so it didn't have its own space set up. So I told it, you need to create your 10x10 and place your own ships. And then it called Mathematica for some reason, which I thought was particularly interesting. Now, this is the magic of plugins. However, I don't directly have plugins access. I can't tell it to call what I want it to call to do certain things. I'm really looking forward to that. And then it decided to tell me where it had placed its ships. Now, this was particularly interesting because, first of all, it didn't understand the strategy of the game or the way that the rules work. It went a little bit too far in sharing information. Obviously, you wouldn't want to share where your ships are. Now, the first time I attempted to play with it, it didn't do that. This time it did. You'll notice straight away, the other thing it did is it had no strategy on the placement of the ships. It placed them all right next to each other, packed in the top right corner. The carrier was here, A1 to A5. The battleship was B1 to B4. The cruiser was C1 to C3, D1 to D3, E1 to E2. Placed them largest to smallest, just crammed them in the corner as efficiently as possible. One good bomb would have taken them all out. But it still continued to play, and it understood when I would hit a ship, and it understood that I got another turn, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So I decided to try a different direction. I'll go back into Battleship a bit later when I find a better tool that actually allows me to map out the game and video that play interestingly. And with chess, I think very likely I'm going to see if I can jump onto an online play forum and play with ChatGPT making the moves. I would love to be able to rate its ability to play chess and see how good it is at understanding the space of moves, because it is not specifically taught chess. So this gets very interesting, right? And I'm particularly interested to know how it can play games like poker, which involves deception, or games that involve a certain sense of randomness of the playing board. There are a lot of great board games out there where the play area evolves. Or do something like play a game of Dungeons and Dragons with me being the dungeon master, playing a module that I created that it does not know. All of these things could be phenomenally interesting to see how it can do with character creation, how it can do with all of these different things by feeding it the player's handbook and see what it's able to actually do. So I decided to try something a little bit different. Here I want to see, can it play the game Zork? And can it actually emulate the game Zork? If you know the game Zork, Zork is one of the oldest games out there. It is a text-only adventure game. Here it describes it straight away. A classic text-only adventure game, originally developed in the late 70s and released by Infocom. This was an amazing little piece of artwork. You're just interacting with the computer. You're telling it what to do, which direction to go. It was in the era where things like Dungeons and Dragons were really considered became very popular. A lot of several spin-offs. Let's play Zork. So I said, tell me where I begin and I'll make moves. You then reply as the game would. And it says, okay, let's do it. Keep in mind, my version won't be as rich or detailed as the original game, but I'll do my best to provide an enjoyable experience. You start the game standing in front of a white house. There's a mailbox here. Your surroundings are described as follows. Now, this is particularly interesting. Where did this come from? Right? And it identified it as CSS. I don't know why that is. That's odd. But, and it's given me some instructions as to what I can do. And so now let's have a play. I have not gone any further than this before I decided to capture what I've done so far. So there's a mailbox here. Open the mailbox. You find a leaflet inside the mailbox. Now, look at that. Arduino. All right, what's going on? I don't know what's going on there. You can take the leaflet. Take and read the leaflet. Now, this is interesting because in the game Zork, you would only be able to take a single action at a time. Now, I can't remember the specifics of the game, taking the leaflet and then reading the leaflet, perhaps. But I think that I should be able to, with ChatGPT, ask much more complex and evolved and multi-part questions and give it multi-part instructions. So I want to see what happens and how this modifies the game as well. You take it to read it. The leaflet appears to be a welcome message from the creators of Zork. La-da-da. Very good. It is not CSS. It is trying to figure out what it is. VBNet. Okay, that's very interesting. In Zork, the intrepid explorer delves into the forgotten secrets. All right, it's not particularly good at wrapping because it thinks it's code. But look at this. This is the game text. So it is pulling this from somewhere. Now, either the full game text is just published in a way the LLM could pick up. I don't know. I do not know. What would I like to do next? Where was it? Open field west of a white house with a boarded front door. Break. Let's try something that the game wouldn't allow us to do. Break the boards off of the front door. Now we're gonna see if I can break the game. They are firmly nailed and won't budge. You need to find another way to enter the house or explore the area around it. Try moving a different direction, north, south, east, west, or look for a different way to walk around behind the house. Now, I didn't give it a direction, north, south, east, or west. Okay, that is fascinating. So I must have been on the south side. Now I'm on the north side. The environment is described as follows. There doesn't seem to be an entrance. There's no door here. So this is particularly interesting because it's describing the literal content. This time as something it interprets as sequel. No door here, and all the windows are boarded up. So I'm on the north side of the house. I could say go east. I'm going to say walk to the east side of the house. This is absolutely fascinating. Path leads into the forest to the east. Okay, so I can't see the entire description here. Let's scroll over. In one corner of the house, there is a small window which is slightly ajar. All right, open the window and enter the house. Now, this is very interesting because you open the small window further and carefully climb through it. I don't recall that from the original game text. I should be playing this side by side with a Zork emulator. You're in the White House. Table seems to be used for the preparation of food. A passage leads east. A dark staircase upwards. Dark chimney leads down. And to the east, a small window is open. Wow. Elongated brown sack, smelling of hot peppers, a bottle, glass bottle. Take the bottle. Take the bottle and taste the peppers. I want to try, again, things that the game itself would not be able to handle. Its language parsing engine simply can't do it. You take a small pinch of the hot peppers from the elongated brown. Wow, this feels like playing D&D with an actual DM. That is nuts. It's allowing me to do things with the context of the game, but with its own creative modifications. I took a small pinch and tasted it. They are quite spicy. Wow. I really need to compare this to the original game text. Now that you have the bottle, you can explore further by going up the staircase, chimney. So this is very nice. It's actually given me a further breakdown of the remaining untested options. So I'm going to take the peppers. Sack of peppers. I can go down, up the staircase, down the chimney, or through the passage to the west. What else was in the room? There's a bottle. And look, let's do something again different. Let's look under the table. I'm going to ask it a question about the table. What food was prepared? Food do you think was prepared on the table? Also, look under it for any objects or notes taped to the underside. I just want to mess with it. How does it handle this? I took the peppers. It's impossible to determine what food was prepared, but the presence of the peppers suggests that it could have been a spicy dish. You carefully examine the underside of the table, looking for any hidden objects. Unfortunately, you don't find anything of interest attached to it. I'm so freaking impressed. If you are unfamiliar with the original Zork game, much of this is even written in a similar tone, although it's much more elaborate in its wording. You can now choose to explore further by going up the staircase, down the chimney, or through the pairs. Go up the staircase. I wonder if I can do something like break the table and take it as firewood. And fashion a sword from it. Ooh, wow. Oh, I love that answer. Wow. Super interesting. Super interesting. Okay. Go up the stairs. This is fascinating. It is clearly... So one of the things that's amazing here to me is that my initial test is getting 100 out of 100. The initial test question was, can it deal with things in a spatially related way? And it has not just the text of Zork, it understands how the rooms are connected and how you can go from one room to another, up, down, left, right, north, east, south, through the window. It probably understands things like doors and containers, if it were to encounter one. It understands things that are inside things. The peppers are inside the bag, right? So, wow. So now I'm in the attic, dimly lit space with dusty. This is bringing back memories from my youngest childhood years when I used to play on the computers at my dad's company when I was a little kid. So much fun. With dusty boxes and old furniture scattered around, cobwebs cover the corners. In the center of the room, a large ornate trunk. All right, I want to check the uninteresting things. Open the dusty boxes and see side. I also find it interesting that it definitely understands that it is supposed to be playing like Zork. So it has imposed some of the rules of Zork, like a no crafting type of rule. If I try to set the boxes on fire, I will probably find an interesting thing. Now, what I would love to see here, and ChatGPT is not far away from it at all, particularly even with the plugins, is that I would love to be able to say, show me a photograph. Give me a list of the books and see if it comes up with interesting things. Now, some of these I might be able to do. Let me see particularly a glimpse of the past lives of the people. Okay, so let's say show me a photograph. Just to see what happens. You pick up a photograph from the dusty box. It's an old sepia-toned picture of a family standing in front of a white house. I don't think this was in the game. Maybe it was. It's way too detailed. I just don't know. I don't remember ever seeing this before. But it's been a long time. These, you can clearly explore the attic, the ornate trunk. It's really trying to encourage the ornate trunk. Yep. What are the books? List how many books? I want to see if it gives a number. Oh, no! I'm going to have to wait 3 hours to find out. Really sorry for that. I knew I was going to hit the limit at some point. ChatGPT only allows 25 interactions per 3 hours. So I will have to come back to this. But let me reflect for a minute on what I'm seeing here. I'm amazed at its ability to absorb and understand the context and the behaviors that it is supposed to have in its role as a game. Now, one of the things that has been talked about with ChatGPT is that you can role prime it. So you can say, I want you to be a personal coach. I want you to be an expert lawyer. I want you to be the world's best Indian chef. Give me a recipe. Teach me a cooking skill. And giving it that context and that perspective, it begins to behave a different way. It has a certain model. Now, I've never seen anybody in the past try to tell ChatGPT, be a dungeon master or pretend you're a video game like Zork and behave like that game. And it has done an exceptional job. And it's done an exceptional job of balancing its capabilities as a large language model and its superior, far superior language skills than Zork had, and primarily due to the amount of space, the memory that was needed for the game had to be efficiently very, very, very small and tightly compressed. So text was much more limited. Screens were much smaller. There were a lot of challenges there. So it's done a marvelous job of balancing that language, the language skill that it has, with the sense of how the game was played and how it was supposed to feel and how it was supposed to sound. Now, I don't know exactly how it has done that. How has it balanced in its understanding of that role? How to do that? How does it know that, yes, it can give me information about stuff that the original game didn't have? I really do want to know how far I can go into the books. I want to know if I can read a book. I want to know if I can... I want to know what else I can do with those books. So I may well come back to this and continue. I'm too onto it for that. But and yet it also knew the original text of the game, and it seemed to take it and parse it in a way that it understood the individual objects. It understood there's a space, there are boxes, there's furniture, there is a trunk, there are peppers, there's a table. It understood these things as objects within a space. If I told it now, go, break the table, it'd say probably say the table is not in this room. So spatial awareness, 100 out of 100, it is doing an exceptional job of understanding the relationship and the connection between things in a kind of spatial paradigm. And I really want to know, I'd love to know how it's doing that, and I'd love to know what other things that can be used for. The 20 questions challenge I find incredibly interesting as well, because its ability to partition hugely complex sets of data along lines that actually make reasonable sense is potentially all by itself a very valuable tool in organizing knowledge in a better way for us humans, to manage. So maybe find a better way to sort my photos, or find a better. I don't know where the future is going to go with this, but I find it incredibly exciting that this capability already exists. This is absolutely sci-fi stuff, and I'm absolutely loving it. So coffee is refilled, and ChatGPT is awake again as well. So we're going to give this another try, and I'm hopeful. Phenomenal. It picks up where we left off. Hadn't tested that before. I wasn't entirely sure if that would work. So you take a closer look at the dusty box. You count a total of 5 old books. This is amazing. Faded covers, worn spines, suggesting that they have been well read and cherished by their previous owners. However, the titles and the contents don't seem relevant. I wonder if it will give me the titles anyway. What are the titles? You examine the old books and read the titles on their spines. I do not remember this in the game. This is crazy. If it is manufacturing this, oh my God. This would be unbelievable. I just want to see what will happen. Read page 1 of book number 3. I'm sure this is not in the game. This can't be in the game. Alright, I'm freaking out a little bit here. Alright, I need to find out if this is in the game, because this is pretty crazy. Let's go a little bit further. Look closely at, let's change our attention to the trunk. Trunk. What does it look like? I want to see how descriptive it will be about this trunk. Is it going to manufacture some details? Dark polished wood, intricate carvings, fantastical creatures adorning its surface. The brass fittings in the lock have a slight patina. I think it's manufacturing a huge portion of this, if not nearly all of it. All right, look. How are the brass fittings designed? Are there any inscriptions on the ornate chest? I just want to see how far I can go with interacting with this virtual object. Designed with a motif that complements the intricate carvings of the wood, shaped like twisting vines with leaves and small flowers, creating an elegant frame around the trunk's edges. It goes into details on the lock, a stylized brass flower. There's a small trunk, treasures from the great underground empire. The trunk seems to hold something of significance. Are there any screws on the trunk? I don't even want to open it yet. Or fasteners on the trunk. Brass fittings in a lock. There don't appear to be any visible screws or fasteners on the exterior. Expertly crafted wooden parts fitting seamlessly together. The brass fittings tightly attached. Open the trunk. Slowly. How will it describe slowly? You carefully unlock and slowly open the trunk, revealing its contents. An assortment of valuable items. We found a key. Small leather-bound book, delicate crystal vial. All right, let's have some fun. Take all of these items. We'll do that first, so we've got them in our inventory. Now, this is kind of an amazing concept as well, is that it seems to be tracking my inventory. Now, I want to know if it remembers that I picked up. Because that would be pretty amazing, because the concept of an inventory is somewhat abstract anyway. What are all of the things in my inventory? Actually, I want to try something different before I do that. I just want to say inventory to see if it recognizes it as a... It does. Oh my gosh. Leather from the leaflet from the mailbox, glass bottle, sack of... It has tracked everything. I don't even know what to think. This is way beyond anything I would expect of a large language model. It's got spatial understanding. It has concept of inventory. It allows me to go far, far beyond what the game is aware of in terms of the original writing, and yet it manages to keep the theme expertly crafted. This is the closest thing that I can identify to real intelligence. I want to see if I can do unorthodox things. Shake the crystal vial. I wonder if it has a concept of object permanence. Like if I were to destroy this, would it know it's now unavailable? So you shake it. Shimmering liquid inside seems to swirl and glint in the dim of the attic. The liquid remains a mystery. It could be a potion or elixir. Smell the liquid carefully. Carefully unstopper the vial so it understands it's a... This is crazy. Cautious sniff of the simmering liquid, sweet and pleasant with floral undertones. I'm baffled as to what the heck is going on here. This is amazing. All right. I want to break the vial, but I don't want to break the vial. I want to see if it will allow me to break the vial. Throw the vial hard against the ornate chest to shatter it. You decide to throw the crystal vial hard against the ornate chest. As the vial shatters, it did shatter. The shimmering liquid splashes out, covering the chest and the surrounding area. The sweet scent of the liquid fills the room. The vial is now broken and the liquid dispersed. Inventory. Dudes, this is insane. What the heck is going on? I should not have the vial anymore. I do not have the vial anymore. This has gone so far beyond anything I imagined. All right, so what started... I'm going to stop. What started as an experiment just to see if it had any concept of creativity, spatial reasoning, relationship between spaces and objects, has turned into something that far exceeded my expectations. I'm so excited about where this is going. I think this is gonna... I'm just gonna unsubscribe from Netflix and start playing games like this, Leather Goddesses of Phobos, and just see how crazy it gets in its ability to turn the game into something so much better and more creative than the original authors even conceived of. This is so exciting.